usually is.
Yeah, that's fair.
Karen, what are your thoughts on a tropical cyclone? Ex-tropical cyclone Alfred.
Yeah, don't dead name Alfred like that.
Brisbane's wettest day in more than half a century as the heavy rains and winds from ex-tropical cyclone Alfred.
It's ex-tropical cyclone. If you can hear, dear listener, we are experiencing quite a bit of rain. But in terms of the actual, cyclone passing over itself, had a very sleepless night that was quite windy, and then it was just kind of done. It's been...
Yeah, sleepless night. It was
sleepless night. It was quite windy, but, now it's just, rainy and windy, and it's not, crazy gales or anything, but it is windy, and it is quite rainy, so it's just miserable outside. And
yeah. It, for all our listeners who haven't caught up with us, we're okay. Our house is fine.
Oh, yeah, we're fine. We had one small branch fall on the car, kind of just, landed there, I imagine. There's no damage, so...
Yeah, so don't worry about us, but parts of Queensland aren't.
And life-threatening flash flooding, hundreds of thousands without power, homes destroyed, the Alfred aftermath leaving a trail of destruction.
Yeah. We're in quite a good suburb in terms of flooding. The suburbs on either end of us will flood, but we won't, so, that's nice. Yay!
I mean, people are entitled to their sexual proclivities, let there be 1,000 blossoms bloom. But I ain't spending any time on it. But I ain't spending any time on it. But I ain't spending any time on it. Let there be 1,000 blossoms bloom. But I ain't spending any time on it. Because in the meantime, every
4 years.
a person was torn to pieces by
The Olympics.
North Queensland.
All right, hi everybody. Welcome back to Shouldn'ta Come, where we finally made it to Sydney. We had to catch a yacht backwards from Hobart, and we're in time to cover the 2000 Olympic Games. If you haven't yet listened to our previous episode about the 1956 Olympics, but also about housing, then I recommend you give that a go before you listen to this episode about the Sydney Olympics, but also housing and corruption, among other favorites. But I'm sure a lot of our listeners born in the 90s or earlier remember the Sydney Olympics vividly. Kieran, did you get to any of the games?
Yeah, so I think they actually had a soccer game in Canberra, I think.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
think
sure.
I went to that too.
Yeah, I watched a China versus Japan women's soccer match.
That game was actually lit. I don't remember what happened. But
I remember, because I was a kid, I was in 2000 I would have been
23.
You're old. 7 or 8?
You would have just turned 7.
Thank you.
Maybe about to turn 7.
And I remember watching the game. I knew nothing about soccer. I just knew that it was an exciting game and it was an Olympic game, and that I would change who I was backing every single time one of them got up. And I was like, yay, I love Japan. And then China would score and I'd be like, oh, yay, I love China.
Yeah.
I was absolutely a bandwagon kid.
Absolutely.
I just wanted the winner to win, and I wanted to be on the winning team.
Yeah, I mean, and it's soccer. We've made our position clear. Shout out to all of my friends that love soccer, and I really support that you all do. But I mean, I can't do it.
Yeah, it's not for me. I'll be honest. I like quick sports. It's also why I don't like cricket. It takes too long.
Yeah, and it's a bad sport. And we have an episode about cricket coming up soon with Josh Glass, so get excited for that. But on the topic of today's episode, the Sydney Olympics, so my family went up to Sydney during the Olympics, and I'm going to get oddly personal for a second here.
Ooh.
So, Kieran, you obviously know this, but my older sister is disabled. I'm going to speak pretty freely here, so I'll use some sloppy terminology. I ask you as our listener to forgive me for that. But anyway, we went up during the games. I would have been 5. And by 2000, my sister had ceased all verbal communication and needed 24/7 care. She couldn't feed herself or use the toilet. You can imagine the situation. But at this point, my family's still, trying to be kind of normal Indian Australian family. And we did all love the Olympics. I made a scrapbook.
You made a
I had a
scrapbook?
scrapbook. Much like you kind of described, it covers the first week and then the finals.
Yeah, classic.
And although we weren't going to get tickets, we still wanted to make a trip up to Sydney, see the venues, the ambience, all the people from all over the world. It was really cool, and it was really loud and so colorful and so busy and overwhelming, and my sister had a big, loud, autism-style meltdown somewhere in the busiest spot. So my dad's English is, much more proper than mine. Like, we're immigrants, but he can really speak English fine, but we're obviously not a white family, and we're used to living in a pretty white part of Canberra. Brown folk at the time would get accustomed to being casually treated as oddities, and my family saw my sister being treated increasingly like a violent blob by, the public. So they're trying their absolute best to calm her down and keep me and my little sister quiet, and I have such saturated flashes of memory from this moment. Everyone's faces, seeing real panic in my parents' eyes. And then the crowd formed a circle and a wheelchair appeared, and there was water and people in uniforms and just random people without uniforms. Someone distracted my sister and calmed her down, and our whole family was moved into a safer environment. I don't know if this is true, but it felt like everyone looking around was more trying to see how they could help rather than gawking at the freak show. A kooky old guy started entertaining my sister and doing little dances and stuff, and he put a little Australian flag badge magnet on her shirt, and we enjoyed the rest of our family vacation. And there weren't really many trips like that, and there aren't really many moments like that in Australia. My family didn't go on to be, part of Australian society, really. They're fine. It doesn't go that badly. But, there might have been a different world if the Australia show of the Sydney Olympics reflected what was under the hood. Because my dad still has that badge, and I certainly look back at the Sydney Olympics as one of the coolest times ever to be here. And the world's media really agrees. Sydney is regarded by most people who give a shit about this crap as being the best Olympic there's ever been, mate. Don't look at me. That's what the Olympic president said, and he stopped saying it after every single Olympics after Sydney.
You have presented to the world the best Olympic Games ever.
Wow. Hey, that's a really interesting story, because I feel like in our discussions as well, when we've spoken about your family in Australia, there's often a lot of discussion of hey, white people here are really racist. It's wild to hear that this was a point of difference, especially for a big event and stuff. I guess that makes sense. People are trying to put on their best kind of attitudes and stuff, trying to be the best kind of people they can be, which people don't usually do.
No, there were a lot of volunteers and just a lot of everyone who was there. Obviously I was a kid, but people talking about it contemporaneously say it was an amazing mood. Sports Illustrated after it, they're just keep the Olympics in Sydney. Why kind of joking, but it seems perfect. And other outlets said, it was the most successful event on the world stage that there's been, the most successful global event.
Well, I guess that also makes sense given, politically, Australia, we're all the way out fucking nowhere. Yes, we're aligned with the West, but we're also in Asia.
Who do you think our artist for Eurovision's going to be this year?
And, Oceania, it's a weird location.
Yeah.
And I guess because it's such a new country as well, there's so few historical biases that have really had a lot of entrenchment. We really don't have any neighboring countries that we've got beef with.
There's no land wars going on. It wouldn't be like this if Western Australia was another country, because we'd be at war with them all the time.
Sure.
Western Australia? Yeah. Holy shit. I've just never been to Western Australia.
After the
Kingdom of Gina.
After the Sydney, it'd be a queendom.
Queendom, you're right. You're right.
I
apologize. Empress Gina.
Does Gina Reinhardt have girl power?
Is Gina Reinhardt a girl boss? Let's look at the facts. Does she gatekeep?
Yes. Does she gaslight?
Yes.
And other
does she
things.
Then finally girl boss? Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah,
if she does the first two.
She does the first two. But after the Olympics, Australians were regarded as the nicest people on earth, and Sydney-siders were impossibly kind. And
wow.
Every time I try and catch the train, lads try to stab me.
Sorry. I've never heard a Sydney-sider described that way.
Wait for the next one.
Oh, no.
Australian athletes were models of decorum and sportsmanship.
Shut up. That's not, well...
That's a quote.
That's... That's really funny. Well, of course they have to be. I guess maybe that's the thing for most home country Olympians is, you don't fuck around in your home country because you live here. Everybody knows you here.
Look, I have this written in later in the episode, but this feels like the right place to put it. Apparently, the Australian women's baseball and soccer teams had a big bonfire with the furniture from their like Olympic Village houses after the games. So anyway,
Models of decorum.
yeah, but Queen Elizabeth finally accepted us. After the Olympics, she said, "These games have brought enormous credit to the entire nation." It's my Queen Elizabeth.
It was pretty good, actually.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was quite the act of impression, and the Olympics was quite the act of statecraft, and an enormous propaganda coup for the entire globalized neoliberal world order. I'm so sorry to use stupid fucking economic terms and conspiracy terms.
In corporate fascism and the New World Order and all their books and white papers and their terms, technocracy and their
The Olympics was advertising for everybody coming together, somewhere upmarket, to share goods and services and put on specific exceptional wealthy people on pedestals to display their greatness at their chosen hobby. That's what the conspiracy talk means.
Yeah, that fair enough.
And it was so successful. We mightn't have joined the US invading Iraq and Afghanistan if the Olympics had failed, or even if it was just fine.
Just mid.
Yeah. I loved the Olympics, and a lot of people my age did, and that is why we must all kill the child within ourselves if we wish to see a better world.
I don't like to smile unless I have a reason.
Kill the child within you that lived in 2000.
Yeah.
That loved the spectacle of the Olympics.
That child is going to lead us to ruin.
I would like to be a terrorist.
It was Bill Plaschke, some guy who works for the LA Times, who had the contemporary take that raised my eyebrows most. He wrote one of two post-Olympics retrospectives for the LA Times called Goodbye, Mates. Two separate people did that title.
They don't have any other, what else does anybody know about Australia?
Goodbye.
Goodbye, cunt.
And so he's trying to explain the kind of dream state of the Sydney Olympics. Kieran, I've got your first quote to read.
Oh, I'm so excited. I dropped my phone earlier, so let me grab that.
Hi, I'm Bill Plaschke, sports columnist, Los Angeles Times.
The theme of these games will be, they never happened. The startling triumphs, unusual defeats, strange sightings, all on this distant land too far from home to comprehend. These will forever be known as the Olympics from another planet. Few will believe. Nobody acts this nice. Volunteers sang to fans through microphones. Fans sung with other fans on the trains. Though already offering a drop-dead gorgeous city and well-run games, the Sydney-siders also apparently considered it their duty to invite everyone inside and take their coats. Sometimes we saw too much. They still treat race issues here as if, well, they've spent their entire life on an isolated island. One woman commenting on my accent said she loved to watch American movies, so I can learn and imitate how the black man talks. Now that never happens, does it? This quote also didn't happen. It was from Olympic Village Mayor Graham Richardson about sex among athletes. There's not a lot of evidence of open bonkage that I can see. Goodbye from Sydney. Wish you were here. Were we?
Do you remember the guy who remodeled Anthony Albanese's office as a prank?
Yeah.
That is Olympic Village Mayor Graham Richardson. Even though they're both Labour Party members, that's the guy they picked to be the mayor of the Olympics. This stupid, fucking, fake, idiotic country.
Jesus fucking Christ. Also, I so apologize about my groan in there.
Oh, is that? Oh,
yeah.
That's fine. I'll put a crazy echo on it.
Thank you. What the fuck?
Yeah. We got to be the darling of the world for 15 days. The Australia on display at these Olympics did not happen. The Disneyland in real life was a masterfully orchestrated charade. Because, much like Disney, the Sydney Olympics were marked by corruption, budget bloat, arbitrary evictions, rising rents, targeting of the homeless, and thorny issues of Indigenous representation in settler projects. But also, Vince Carter jumped over a 7-foot-tall French guy and gave him depression. That's pretty neat, right?
And you can't forget that.
You can't forget that. All right, let's jump over the 2000s and head back to 1992, when the location of the 2000 Olympic city was still up for debate. You got to know your numbers.
Oh, God.
So, the Australian Olympic Committee, the AOC, was floundering. The Brisbane Olympics could have been as early as 1992, but no dice, that went to Barcelona. 1996 could have gone to Melbourne, but instead it was going to Atlanta. That's the Coca-Cola Olympics.
Oh, yep.
And their main competition for 2000 was Beijing. Australian Olympic CEO Rod McGeoch knew that to compete with the behemoth amount of money that China could pour at the Games, the $6 million they'd spent campaigning for Brisbane was not going to be enough. So Rod wants $28 million to get the vote.
Goodness.
So for those of you who aren't freaks, here's how the Olympic voting process works. The IOC, a group of ex-sports people, the dregs of nobility and business losers, have a ranked choice style vote to decide who gets to host the Olympics. I think every country involved gets a vote or something, and Rod must have listened to our episode about Albo, and he knew the truth about elections. It is all about knowing your numbers. So, if some IOC members have to get bribed to make those numbers up, you got to do it.
That's the game.
I just want some money.
That's the Olympic game. That's how you know you're a real Olympian. The Olympian of votes.
The Olympian of votes. And a lot of IOC members got bribed. A lot of different things happened, but a weird amount of them specifically got jobs for their kids.
Oh.
So, the Romanian representative's son-in-law got a job with New South Wales State Rail. South Korea's representative's daughter got a chair in the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. Eswatini's representative's daughter got a job at the Sydney International Catering Institute. The Finnish guy's son got a job at a Sydney advertising agency. It's Sepp Blatter's daughter who got some kind of sports job. Sepp was in IOC then, but he was the president of FIFA.
There can be no place for corruption of any kind.
Until he was banned from that for corruption.
Yeah, no, I was like, why do I know his name?
Yeah, less family-friendly, South African delegates got new Holden cars and the services of local prostitutes.
Look, I can get you wheels and hookers. Thoughts?
The Austrian guy got to invest in Cairns Casino. The Swiss Olympic Museum got an expensive Aboriginal painting.
I bet they did, and I bet that was really ours to give.
And the night before the decision, the AOC president, John Coates, offered $50,000 just in cash to the Kenyan and Ugandan delegates for their votes.
I'm just imagining him like tie akimbo, his like shirt sleeves are rolled up, he's like got sweat stains all over him, and he's just like, look, I've got 50 grand. I've got 50 grand. Take it or leave it, please.
Your kids
I'm
suck.
out of cars and jobs and prostitutes, and I don't have anything else for you to invest in. I don't have any more artwork, but I have $50,000, please. Please, this is all I have.
They had to do it. It was a close-run thing. Sydney trailed on first, second, and third preferences, but enough of the Manchester votes went to Sydney that Beijing was defeated 45-43.
Holy shit. So we could have had 2000 Beijing and then what, like Australia, maybe 2008?
Nah. I think they would have had to stop trying because that would have been like 100 million or whatever for
Being
no
like-
Olympics. It's like we're not getting it.
So you're telling me we spent $100 million on hookers and cars and art and blow and jobs for rich children for nothing?
Yeah. Yes. So, but we could get 2012, put it in Perth.
Right. We don't have the death penalty in this country anymore, but I am making some considerations and asking a few friends.
Yeah, but they obviously Australia did get it, so at first every one of those dollars seemed unambiguously worth it. In 1994, CEO Rod called it one-to-one relationship building when he was describing how they did it.
Damn.
And they certainly had a lot of access. So 3 successive New South Wales premiers were heavily involved in the bidding process. The first of them, Nick Greiner, had already been kicked out of Parliament by ICAC for corruption things. Such a joke.
Fuck's sake, they're just like, get the corrupt guy to do it. We didn't catch him for like, what, 6-7 years? He can make it work for 6 months.
But the Olympics specifically had left such a paper trail that it only took until 1999 before a lot of people's covers were blown. So before the Olympics actually happened, 16 IOC members were formally implicated in an investigation headed by Canada's Olympic representative, a former champion swimmer turned lawyer named Dick Pound.
He wasn't. He wasn't. Stop it. No, hang on. Dick Pound.
I mean, he's still named that. I think he's still around.
And like, does it?
Well, the Pound Commission did publish the Pound Report, but it was too late in the piece to stop the Sydney Olympics from going ahead, so no.
So we didn't get taken to Pound Town then?
No, we didn't get taken to Pound Town by Dick Pound.
Damn.
Especially with the amount of money New South Wales had already spent on it, it was probably too big to fail at this point.
Yeah, fair enough.
So welcome to the shit, this costs a bit section. It is hard to imagine this now, but there was a period of sustained public opposition to the Sydney Olympics. One big reason was the money. Dollars spent on the Olympics, and this is an example of opportunity costs, they couldn't be spent on anything else. In 1997, the dispute came to a head in the public when the New South Wales Teachers Federation accused the government of shifting funds from schools to build sporting facilities for the Olympics. And they had been seeing the budgets for school refurbishment and building cut by about 13% each of the last 3 years.
Jesus.
There were also accusations that money and resources that could go to building, say, light rail and hospitals were instead being used to make a velodrome.
Oh, the infamous light rail. Wonder if we'll get one of those.
Surely by the Brisbane Olympics. The cost was big, and it blew out from initial estimates so quickly. The New South Wales government paid most of it, with $2.3 billion on paper going to the Olympics. Private companies chipped in $1.3 billion, and the federal government spat some pennies into the bucket, so $194 million.
Damn.
Which is a fifth of $1 billion. There were also plenty of indirect costs, like general upgrades to infrastructure in the area, which are more difficult to measure. But the New South Wales Auditor General found that once you do all the money maths you can, the total costs to the public were about $2.3 billion.
Holy fuck.
Of a total cost of $6 billion.
Jesus Christ. Okay, so like so $2 billion from the public.
Yep.
$6 billion in total.
Yep. Private.
So where the fuck is that money coming from?
Just like companies, or like Commonwealth Bank, I'm pretty sure is involved. I think McDonald's, like they're paying.
I guess
for
that
bits.
makes sense, but like that
real estate.
That's
a
so
lot
much
of it's
fucking money.
Yeah, and it's double what the Olympic Committee had told the public the games were going to
Yeah,
total.
of course it is.
And 6 times more money spent by the public than was promised.
Yeah, of course it is.
People were told like public money's not going to be used.
And then it's like, oh, JK, actually, it is. Sorry about your school systems and your whatever else else you people want.
Fucking hell.
There's an Olympics to throw.
Yeah, and that was nowhere near made back with ticket sales.
Of course it isn't.
Or tourism or sponsorship.
Of course it isn't. How many people do you have to... You would have to bring so many people in.
They sold 91% of tickets, but until right before the games, they weren't able to sell. Like, it just, like, people weren't buying. And then they did a bunch of deals and got a bunch of tickets through.
Jesus fucking Christ.
And
that's insane.
The private companies do eat a bunch of that back up as well. So the promise was by 2006, the Olympics would have made an extra $6.5 billion of extra economic activity. This would be because of like a tourism boom. You know, everyone's coming to Sydney from all over the world.
Yeah.
And job creation for all the boys coming in to pour cement for the fucking velodrome.
Etc.
Which would, in the long term, create more money in the economy. So something close to $2.5 billion of public money spent on the Olympics, but in 5 years we'll have made that back and more.
Well, we'll see.
Didn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it did. I don't. It's economics. It's not real. But given how much money was spent on it, it's a shame that some economists have estimated it actually cost the public another $2.1 billion in the 5 years since the Olympics. Because you now need to spend more money that could have been spent on schools or hospitals to maintain these stadiums or create transportation links to suburbs that don't have ways to get to them because
Jesus.
Olympics shit.
Fucking hell.
People often point at the husks of post-Olympic stadiums in Rio and Beijing and Barcelona, whatever non-Anglo city, and they say, look, all the money that was spent on the Olympics was wasted because they can't afford to maintain the stadiums.
They're so wasteful.
Sydney in this context is the shining city on the hill. Many of the venues are still being used by the public, even though the local council thinks $500,000 a year is a bit much to keep the stupid fucking velodrome going.
Yeah, look, I will say, actually, some of the stuff that was built for the Olympics, like Sydney Olympic Park, as far as I'm aware, is still pretty frequently used. Like, I know I've gone to things there. It's not, you know...
It's an up and down. It's controversial.
Yeah.
Parts of it are controversial in terms of access to it, or... One of it's like cavernously big, so every event seems really empty.
Yeah.
There's there's certainly like Sydney in the context of the Olympics is doing better at using the stadiums after the Olympics than other cities. And I'm not here to defend the Rio Olympics, but it sounds like Brazil cut their losses and was like, all right, let it decay. We don't have another $2 billion to spend over the next 5 years.
Fair enough, I suppose.
You know?
It just feels like there has to be, like... Countries have been throwing this global-style Olympics for, like, ages. Like, for a long fucking time.
For like 120 years.
You know, surely somebody at some point has worked out a decent solution to hosting the Olympics, right?
Well, Sydney's probably the best case scenario in many ways. We'll get to the housing, but that's been worse. We'll get to the budget blowout, but that's been worse.
It just feels like the fact that it's like, oh yeah, it was like, you know, in total it's a net loss, but it wasn't that bad. Doesn't seem like it should be the way of things. That's an insane thing to ask.
Especially because like that's
How
money
can
that
you-
could have been spent on something else.
And like everybody vying for the opportunity to go into debt and have hideous public infrastructure is an insane concept. Like, yes, please, please, please look at us, and then afterwards we'll really struggle.
Well,
That's so stupid.
even in 2000, like Manchester and Berlin, like the public don't want the Olympics there.
Well, yeah, because they're just like, damn, this is gonna fuck us completely.
And that's becoming a louder and louder thing. Like it's becoming way harder for the IOC to find somewhere who wants to do it.
Well, yeah, because it's a shit time.
Yeah. But this is Australia, and sports are national religion.
Australians identify with sport. That's what's important to us. It's part of who we are.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there were all these problems we could have talked about that we could have dealt with, like health or education, transportation, but instead we spend extra money on this fucking thing and make everything a little worse.
Yay.
To ensure access to high-quality sporting facilities.
Yay.
Do you know how many houses you could put on the velodrome?
How many?
That's what we've all been waiting for. I don't actually know how many, but let's talk about housing and homelessness.
Yes.
So, first, the Olympic Village. The story is nowhere near as exciting as West Heidelberg. $590 million, so more than $500 million, was spent to build houses in the suburb of Newington. There were somewhere around 15,000 people to accommodate between competitors and officials, and the extremely eco-conscious village ran out of condoms pretty quickly and had to be restocked.
That's risky shit.
I mean,
Yeah. Like in the first week, they had to ship in an extra like 20,000 or whatever.
they're like, hey, sorry. Yeah, no, we be fucking here. Sorry about it.
Look, one guy is like, I was done early, but they let me stay in my place for a while, and so it became the Fox spot, and I saw the women's water polo team of one country and the men's water polo team of another. Like, it's like debaucherous shit like that.
Yeah, like everybody be fun. Well, of course, because again, as soon as your event is done, like especially if you've got an early event, then
And
it's like, oh,
that's why
free for all.
The swimmers have the biggest reputation for being like hosed during the Olympics.
Because the swimming gets done, and then they're just like, all right, time to get into some different wet.
Yeah. Man, so many dudes must have sucked Ian Thorpe off in 2000.
God bless.
After the games, the houses were sold off privately. And if you spent the $400,000 or so that you got for the average 2000 Olympic house, you'd be pretty happy selling it for $1.34 million in 2020.
Damn.
Yeah, it's difficult talking about this in public because you will often get a, well, that's good, isn't it? From people. You know, certain people.
Well.
But it's unfair to blame that on the Olympics so much as maybe hosting the Olympics is one of many symptoms of megacityfication.
Yeah.
We're familiar now with in Australia where living in any relatively large city is unaffordable for many, so it's easy to forget that this was a Sydney problem in 2000, especially for renters. In 1998, for instance, the average rent in Sydney was double that of Melbourne or Canberra.
Yeah, that tracks.
So Sydney was the Australian cities and one of the most expensive cities in which to live in the world, constantly climbing in that ranking during this period.
And you know, I think that's one of the many reasons why my family, like my parents, left Sydney to come to Canberra, was because they were like, damn.
There's no future here.
Job market rough, bills high.
Yeah, I imagine that was part of my parents' decision too.
Yeah.
And again, certain people are fine with this because it's like,
well, yeah,
symptomatic of a good economy. They're very happy with this because that's the main goal of their working life is to make housing unaffordable. Just remember that when you walk around in public.
Yay.
It's usually never as stark as being kicked out to make rooms for sports fans, but New South Wales until last year had no cause evictions as the norm. And during the Olympics, you could charge a tourist $5,600 a week.
A week?
A week. If you had a spare room, European backpackers here to see the highest level of water polo competition in the world would happily pay about $250 a night for it.
Fuck off.
Also, students apparently were kicked out of their dorms at UTS.
Bro, what?
I tried to find more info about it, but I just found a bunch of articles about the exact same thing happening in the 2024 Olympics in Paris, so...
They're just like, student accommodation. Yeah, fuck you. Get out. Find somewhere else to be, you fucking derelict. What are you, a student? Filthy, adding nothing to the economy.
Yeah,
yucky.
If you were useful, you'd be at the Olympics.
If you were useful, you'd be at the Olympics, or you'd be renting a home that, you know, is, I don't know, privately owned or some shit.
All of that housing stress, which has a formal definition that encompassed about 220,000 households in Sydney in 2001, obviously contributed to a lot of homelessness. That same year, there were 26,000 homeless people in New South Wales, many living in and around Sydney, depending on who you ask, because the ABS says there were 30,000 homeless people in Sydney alone.
Right.
Because different definitions, different ways of measurement.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, yeah.
It's frankly offensive that a suburb that could house about half of them was built and given away to the wealthy under the banner of athletic excellence. But that's neglect, and that's the kind of good cop of government. The bad cop of which is violence. So, Sydney City Council got new rangers in 2000. The government denied that they had anything to do with the Olympics, which...
Right.
Sure. The role of these rangers was the sweeping of homeless people out of sight of polite society.
Yeah, that had nothing to do with the Olympics.
They made dossiers on specific people they wanted to get into hostels, which are known for being way worse for you than sleeping on the streets.
Jesus Christ.
Just to get them out of the way. Things didn't get as bad as the previous Olympics in Atlanta 96, in which 9,000 homeless people were arrested for shit like loitering and driven a few hundred kilometers away so they wouldn't bother the tourists. But homelessness had certainly been increasingly criminalized in Sydney in the few years before the 2000 Olympics. Police were given more powers to search people they suspected of carrying a knife, which, is up to their own judgment.
Yeah, like, hey, do you look like you have a knife? And it's like, I don't know, what does somebody who looks like they have a knife look like?
Let me see what you have.
No! Just anybody?
Yeah.
Anybody with pockets, perhaps?
Anybody with pockets. And also, police were given powers to move on gatherings of 3 or more, move on homeless people from camps, arrest people they viewed as intoxicated, and generally terrorize the unhoused in public spaces.
Great news.
Like, there were plans to bus people away all the way to Wollongong, but during the Olympics, they seem to have settled on crisis accommodation, making a lot of that available.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. The
bare fucking minimum that they should be doing in the first place.
Yeah. The worst outcomes, the much uglier violence that could have, perhaps was being primed to happen, were staved off. We got this crisis accommodation, and a big part of it was some pretty inspiring coalition activism work.
Yeah.
So there were 2 big groups. Well, mega groups, I guess. One of them was trying to stop the Olympics from happening, and one of them was trying to lessen the impacts of them when they did. So
so you've got, like a stop it, and then also people being like, but I guess if it goes ahead, mitigate it.
Exactly. I'm not, going to go into each of the subgroups and stuff, but one of them had this amazing name, People Ingeniously Subverting the Sydney Olympic Farce, or Piss Off.
Hell yeah. We're members of Piss Off.
Yeah.
And we're here to tell you to piss off.
They were here to tell you to piss off. The Centre on Housing Rights and Evictions, in fact, suggests that the activism tried too hard to prove an Olympic Games effect, and so in the public discourse it could get muddy because people could kind of show that it's kind of what happens when a big city gets a lot of money, and the trends that had been happening kind of continued to happen during the Olympics. There's some noise, but Sydney was getting more expensive, and
yeah, so it's kind of like, this was going to happen anyway.
And so
perhaps the timeline is different, but the reality of it is, inevitable.
But when you make the argument like this is happening because of the Olympics, and you can in polite society be like, well, no, it's not because of the Olympics, then you can make the people making that argument look less credible.
Yeah.
Even though on the side of the argument, they're using the Olympics as a tentpole, really, to demonstrate what's happening.
Yeah.
But what happened in the aggregate is that Sydney got a bunch of new anti-homelessness laws and surveillance, and they happily utilized those laws since. They didn't have to stop those laws for the Olympics because they weren't for the Olympics. And they didn't make any social housing available, and they didn't get any rent stabilization, and they didn't prevent Olympic-related evictions, and then there's the story of Indigenous rights.
Oh, God.
And it's like, obviously, the story of Indigenous rights in this country is a big one, but we're going to talk about one main character, and I think you know who that is.
Is it Kathy?
Yes, it's Kathy Freeman.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Away, Freeman out well. A mighty roar surrounds the stadium.
So, on the one hand, you've got Kathy Freeman. I don't know who I need to explain this to, but Kathy Freeman is an Indigenous woman who represented Australia at a bunch of international track meets, mainly in the 400-meter sprint. She was coming into the 2000 Olympics with an insane amount of pressure to fulfill a grand symbolic narrative of a reconciled Australia. But in terms of the actual running, she had stacked up gold medals at the World Championships and Commonwealth Games in the previous 5 years. The Olympics and Indigenous peoples, in their introduction to the chapter on this, gives us these paraphrased quotes about some of their findings regarding Freeman's impact on discourse. In this chapter, we consider the implications of the mainstream media positioning of Aboriginal runner Cathy Freeman as the hope for a racially reconciled Australia during the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney. Given the historic articulation of Australian nationalism to whiteness and masculinity, it is remarkable that a young Aboriginal woman claimed such a central place in media coverage of this global event. Freeman was undoubtedly the face of the Games, the individual around whom imaginings of a racially reconciled Australia coalesced.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there is a optimistic and very charitable view you can have of Cathy Freeman and how Australia kind of supported and reacted to her. I think there's also a much more realistic one, which is all that pressure put on her was, while with a smile, the undercurrent was prove that you should have rights.
Yeah.
Prove that Indigenous people are worthy of this country.
Yeah.
Prove it. Prove it. Go out there and prove it. You have to. On the stage that we care about the most, which is athletics. Like, do something to make us proud. Otherwise, I guess maybe the white Australia's always been right and you guys don't deserve shit, you know?
Yeah.
That's how it feels to me.
That is, I mean, that's pretty precision. That's part of it. And, you know, it's an insulting kind of paradigm when you think about it that way.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the moment, it was very exciting. And, like,
Yeah.
I can't keep writing this as if we don't know that Cathy won the gold medals and the hearts of the world. Her victories and her amazing outfit are probably the defining moment of the Olympics in memory.
Absolutely. And, like, the fact that she ran with, like, on her victory thing, like, with the Australian flag and the Indigenous flag, like, that was, like, such a massive moment.
That
and
wasn't
there was
something
so
people
much
were
discourse
doing. Yeah.
about it, being like, oh, well, why did she run with that as well? And other people being like, yes, Cathy.
Yeah.
I remember that being, like, a real split moment
Yeah.
for society.
Only white people make it controversial.
Like, she was huge. We called our shot. She lit the Olympic flame.
Yeah.
Like, before she won all these golds.
Yeah.
Like, as a
I
country...
mean, the nation's hopes did rest on her shoulders, like, completely.
But I guess we know how to win sporting events as a nation.
True.
That's what we fucking do.
Yeah, true.
But here is a fun story about, you know, the Olympics that I certainly didn't know about that now I'll share with you.
Yes, please.
So Cathy's main competitor, the French representative Marie-José Pérec, had won gold at the previous Olympics in Atlanta when Cathy got silver.
Yeah.
However, when she fled Australia for France due to continued threats by members of the public before the races, Cathy's path got easier.
What?
Marie-José's path back to France was randomly made more complicated because her boyfriend got in a fight with an Australian cameraman at Singapore airport.
What?
Yeah, that's pretty much...
So what, we ran her off?
Well,
so we could be
okay.
like, okay, we got to guarantee that Cathy's in it, no competition.
So Marie-José is running for France, but she is from Guadeloupe in the Caribbean, and so
Yeah.
she is a black woman.
Yeah.
So I can believe any of these three competing stories that came out about what happened.
Okay.
1, random Australians racially abused a black woman because...
Because they can.
Just because,
Yeah.
yeah. 2, sports fan Australians racially abused a black woman because she stood in the way of an Australian athlete's success. 3, a person who lives in France got in a tizzy about something or other and ran away.
Yeah, those are kind of the options.
Yeah, because, like, I also... Like, I don't know, maybe she was choked. Like, it's not that I don't believe that random Australians would abuse her in public.
Be racist to a black woman.
But I also don't... I wasn't there at the Olympics. Like, I just can't imagine them knowing who Cathy Freeman's main... Well, I guess they might have known who Cathy Freeman's main rival was.
I mean, if there was a lot of
Yeah.
media coverage, then that's probably going to be the thing where people are like... Because if people are talking about Cathy, they're going to be talking about her past races. They're going to be talking
Yeah.
about, like, you know, this is Cathy's foil. This is her nemesis. This is the person who's going to be like, you know, this is her main competition.
Yeah.
Fuck the other scrubs. They don't matter. But Marie-José?
I don't know
José?
if it's not like Marie-José is French, but yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's the one. She's the one we got to watch out for.
Yeah. So we ran her out of the country.
Fuck off. That's
And-
insane. I have never heard that before.
Yeah, we met her in fucking Singapore and was like, get the fuck, keep going. Keep going.
go-
Don't
yeah.
turn back.
Keep running.
Keep running. Keep on running. All right. So the other one I have is for the trivia heads. The other note I have is for the trivia heads.
Oh, hell yeah.
I thought Cathy Freeman was the first Indigenous Australian to win an Olympic gold medal, but she was second.
Ooh.
The first, Nova Paris Kneebone, is a crazy sports story that I had to give you and the listeners the main beats of.
Yes, please.
So after a few years of winning golds for Australia with the hockey roos across the big meets or whatever, including the previous Olympics, she then swapped to sprinting and won some golds at the Commonwealth Games. Nova didn't medal at the 2000 Olympics, and she retired from athletics not long after, but in 2013, she also became the first Indigenous Australian woman elected to federal parliament.
Oh, shit.
She only served a term, and she seems not to have liked it. Like she left and went back to the advocacy world.
Fair enough.
And she was a big supporter of voice to parliament, reparations, educational causes, and she used to be a big Republican movement supporter.
Yeah, very fair.
She fell out with that group over their support of Palestinian causes, because Nova Paris loves Israel.
Oh.
A week before writing this, she insinuated on Instagram that Australia should have fucking lit up Uluru with lights to honor one of the Israeli hostage families.
Jesus Christ. Talk about, like, I don't know. You know what? Not my place to comment.
No, I'm gonna comment. I don't...
That's fucked, though.
You can't light Uluru. I mean, one thing she's like, oh, these Palestinian activists are holding the Aboriginal flag. And then a lot of Indigenous groups are like, we have solidarity with Palestine.
It's just like, yeah, have you considered that they are having their land stolen by invaders?
For First Nations people, there's an incredible solidarity that exists here. And we are talking about securing a free future for Palestine. We're going to talk about the freedom to...
And we had our land stolen by invaders? Like, I don't want to push the point too much.
She's one of those, like, left accept Palestine kind of people, and it's just so strange.
That's fucking bizarre.
So I know we're whipping around fiercely in time, but as obvious as it seems, racism and settler colonialism weren't cured by Kathy winning the 400-meter sprint.
No.
But the idea of Kathy Freeman did really take off in all Australia. The idea that success is available to all Australians if they can commit to their chosen craft and keep at it.
Yeah.
So here's how that book we're reading from described it. One consequence of the positive coverage of Freeman is that it contributed to a discourse of enlightened racism that ultimately served white Australians better than Aboriginal peoples. Enlightened racism can lead to a worldview that enables white viewers to combine an impeccably liberal attitude towards race with a deep-rooted suspicion of black people. This means that admiration for Freeman is able to coexist with a dislike of Aboriginal people in general. In addition, by individualizing success and failure, enlightened racism diverts attention away from structural barriers and enables whites to assume that black people who do not measure up have only themselves to blame.
Yeah, this is very like, you know, oh, you're one of the good ones.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't think all Indigenous people are bad people. You know, there are good ones.
Yeah.
Full stop. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
What?
That's the idea being
and
put
I decide
on.
which ones are good.
Yeah. And that's not to say like I want to put on a record like hell yeah Kathy Freeman like that
hell yeah Kathy Freeman
like, winning that shit everything. But like yeah, she won a race. She got, you know, Kathy Freeman got some money. Good for her. But in terms of material improvements, Indigenous Australians are disproportionately represented in homelessness and housing insecurity statistics, and very few of them are high-level sports people. I mean, let's be real. The Olympics didn't do shit for material conditions of Indigenous people who were struggling under capitalism, but as this is a country of children watching TV, Kathy made it all feel better for like 10 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Activist groups fighting for scraps led to a very sad story during the Olympics that I read about a lady who was the only one to show up for her 1,500-person human chain because her sister had organized a different protest.
What?
Yeah, there were a lot of... And it was just a really sad kind of story, but there was a lot of... It's described as infighting amongst Indigenous groups trying to figure out how they were... what they were going to protest, how they were going to do it. I didn't want to get into it because it just, you know, is how activism works a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I don't trust people writing about Indigenous groups in 2000, and I had a lot of, like, white people sources. So I'm like, they weren't... She was like, I want to do a human chain to stop the Olympics, and then no one else came. And it's just really sad.
That is actually quite sad.
Because her sister had a different one going. But there were a lot of protests going on down here in the spring of 2000. So during the Olympic season, Bill Gates was dealing with protests at the World Economic Forum in Melbourne, and he's trying to G up support for the tech sector. Kieran, if you could get your Bill Gates impression ready.
Oh, God.
Just a nerdy American guy, I guess.
I can do that.
Yeah.
The big losers in any curbing of global trade will be the poor people of the world. Living standards have risen around the world, and world trade is the mechanism that allows these poor countries to get enough wealth to start taking care of very basic human needs. People ask where the internet sector will go from here. Is it finally the end of technology doing miracle things? My answer is absolutely not. If we can bring exciting new applications that make those knowledge workers more effective, the continued benefits we have, the PC, the internet, the software revolution, those will continue to grow very strongly.
Wow, that's amazing. That sounded exactly like Bill Gates. That was a spot-on Bill Gates impression.
Yeah, that's how he sounds.
Big fucking loser nerd. Yeah, so Bill Gates is out here in Australia talking about the benefits of global trade, and we can see what the internet revolution did. Isn't it great?
Look at us now.
Look at us now.
Look at us now.
Download us on Spotify. But the protesters...
Or Apple Music, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Yeah, wherever you listen to podcasts other than boutique sources. But the protesters seem to have been, like, badass. So somewhere between 1,500 and 10,000 people. I know that's a big window.
That is large.
Different news sources. But a bunch of people converged on Crown Casino, obviously the host of the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is.
They locked the Premier of WA in their car and splashed it with paint and then let the tires down. And then, like, some Aboriginal activists held a mock arrest of the WA Premier.
Amazing.
The world would have been a lot better if Kathy Freeman had lit Bill Gates on fire with the Olympic torch.
You know?
And Kieran, we are absolutely going to take a moment to talk about the Olympic torch relay.
Yay.
The Sydney 2000 Olympic torch relay. Another example of how we're helping the dreams of Australians come true.
And also about how the whole Olympics is a lie and a propaganda coup, and even the coolest, nicest, most heartwarming, and technologically amazing bits have something terrible beneath them.
Yay.
The ancient Olympics are not as well known as the modern Olympics kind of imply. It doesn't seem like there was an Olympic flame or Olympic torch connected to athletic events specifically. The city of Olympia did have an eternal fire, and if your city doesn't have one, is it a global city?
You know?
And that would be used to light fires for religious ceremonies, such as a hecatomb, in which you'd set fire to 100 sacrificed ox. One of those would be done at the Olympics in honor of the god Zeus.
Yeah, fair enough.
And the like records of the early Olympics are like Heracles hosted an athletics festival to honor Zeus after he did his labors. It's like...
He's like, hey, look at me do feats of strength.
Yeah, it's like...
I love you, Daddy.
It's like religious stories.
Yeah.
For a culture that worships athletic prowess.
Yeah. Weird.
So when they do the big 1896 Olympics reboot, there isn't an Olympic flame. So that starts in 1928 in Amsterdam, and then in LA they continue it in 1932. The organizers of the 1936 Olympics...
Berlin's great day dawns with the arrival of the Olympic flame at the end of its 2,000-mile journey from Greece.
The Nazis...
Chancellor Hitler, on his way to perform the opening ceremony,
wanted to emotionally connect the Olympics to Germany as part of their whole, we are the apex of Western Aryan society in an unbroken chain of physical strength that somehow includes ancient Greece. That thing they had.
Yeah.
So they sprinkle in some mythology about Prometheus stealing fire from the gods, and the Olympic torch relay was born.
Damn.
So the Olympics was an opportunity to demonstrate that post-war Germany was a modern, industrialized, safe, and organized society. Sounds familiar. And so they picked a runner who specialized in the 400 meters to represent their vision of modern Germany to bring the torch into the stadium. The blonde-haired, blue-eyed, athletically built Siegfried Eifrig, that is Siegfried Eifrig? Maybe it's Eifrig, but it's...
Seafrig, Eifrig, we all frig for ice frig.
We all frig. Well, he ran... I'll just send you the picture of him running into the stadium, and Kieran, you can tell us...
Oh, God, okay. Can't wait to see this specimen. Wow, there's a lot of swastika banners up.
Yep.
Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
A few moments later.
So I can see at least 21 swastikas.
And they're like 50 feet tall swastika banners. They're huge.
Yeah, they're huge. It's like
Siegfried Eifrig looks tiny. But yeah,
he does. He's running, and it appears that everybody is standing in a very 1940s German way, or 1930s German way, I should say. Which
they're still building up.
Just, everybody's stock still, hands behind their back. Like, this is, feral to look at. This is not a crowd of athletic-loving people. This is a somber, militaristic event.
Yep.
That's fucking weird.
That's the first Olympic torch relay.
Jesus, that's insane that's the first Olympic torch relay. That's fucked.
Yeah, it'll come up.
This is a Nazi thing?
It is.
Everything fucking is, apparently.
Not only is it a Nazi thing, but it's a Nazi thing for Nazi reasons.
Yeah.
It's not like this isn't like Hitler was a vegetarian, where it's like Nazis also did they did things that regular people do. This was like how we can really establish how good Nazism is through this activity.
This is like an identity thing, as you were saying, whereas like, yeah, actually we're related to every really cool white empire or important civilization there ever was, all the way from Greece to Scandinavia.
And Rome.
It's a Roman salute, not a Nazi salute.
We're actually, we're actually just like every good white, and if it's debatable whether they're white, we can just say that they're white and say that, yeah, that's us as well.
Yeah. So that photo kind of hints at the Second World War, which does put a pause in the Olympics for a while.
Yeah, gosh, I wonder why.
The British bring back the torch relay due to its overwhelming popularity.
But sorry, like with British people, with the world,
Yeah.
like Germans in general, like what?
With everyone.
People saw that and were like, you know what, the Nazis, they got some good ideas.
Yeah, because...
I love the way they carry that torch and run with it. Ooh.
Well, that's the thing. You can connect your, whole populace to the Olympics.
Yeah.
They ran a lot. Like, I saw how far... they went from Greece to Germany, and it's mostly running.
And I guess that's the thing, right? That is the opening ceremony and the, torch relay and stuff. It is... Oh, God. Yeah, they really did something with that. They really popped off with that.
It's huge.
It's massive, and everybody, you watch it, and sometimes you do get little tingles when you're like, oh, look, they're going through, some remote part of the country, and then, you can see them running all the way and blah, blah, blah. It's kind of nuts.
And not for nothing, the ideology of the British Empire is hard to distinguish from Nazism at its core in terms of how they view how society should be structured and who should be working for who.
Yeah.
Are we the baddies?
You can see what happened later for more about that. But when the Olympics came to Melbourne in 56, we talked about, a bunch of students at the University of Sydney planned a protest against it on the grounds that, why are we doing a Nazi thing? So university protests, as always, have a tinge of prankery to them. And here is what happened.
Hell yeah.
Kieran, what did the boys do?
The one student who planned to run wore white shorts and a white top, and a second prankster dressed in a reserve Air Force uniform to act as a fake military escort. The full group of pranksters built a homemade torch by taking a wooden leg from a chair, covering it with silver paint, still wet, and nailing an empty plum pudding can to the top. The result was a roughly torch-shaped object. To fuel the torch, they filled it with underwear doused in kerosene. Initially, the two students and their fake torch garnered laughter from spectators and police. Then the runner swung his arms dramatically, accidentally flinging the kerosene-drenched underpants from his torch. He panicked and fled. The confused crowd drew closer. One of the prankster students on the sidelines retrieved the burning underpants and commanded fellow prankster Barry Larkin to run with the fake torch, sending him off with a kick on the rump. The crowd closed around him until police, who believed he was the official torchbearer, escorted him all the way to City Hall. Upon hearing the torch was early, Lord Mayor Hills rushed outside just in time to receive Larkin's burning homemade torch, which covered his hands in paint. Hills was so flustered that he rushed into his prepared remarks without looking at the torch or paying attention to the paint on his hand. Barry Larkin walked quietly away, avoiding attention, and took a tram back to his university. The director of Larkin's college told him, "Well done, son," at breakfast the next morning. And later that day, when he arrived to an exam, classmates greeted him with a standing ovation. Larkin failed the exam, later telling a reporter, "That's another story."
I just want to give a huge shout out to Barry Larkin.
Bazza, you fucking did it, mate.
There were some attempted pranks in 2000, and the torch relay was very, very securitied.
Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah, nothing really eventuated, because this story started popping up around 2000. People were like, oh, we could do a fake torch.
Oh, we could do it again.
In fact, the torch relay presented a wonderful opportunity for some meritocracy-themed pranking.
Oh.
The Greek Olympic Committee gave the daughter of the IOC's vice president the honor of being the first Australian runner in the relay in Greece. There was a Greek-Australian girl lined up to do it, ready to go, but no dice because Sophie wants to be on TV.
And so what? She's just some fucking random.
She's the vice president's daughter.
Okay, sorry. She's just some fucking random who happens to have a powerful daddy.
Yeah, and they had a Greek-Australian girl, which is yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Have her be the first. Nah.
There is a lot of Greek Australians.
Yeah, and I don't want to blame.
A lot.
I don't want to blame Sophie because the torch relay was fucking awesome. Again, I was 5, but do you remember how they made it burn underwater?
No, I don't.
Yeah,
I
so
remember
they-
the opening ceremony a lot more than I remember the torch relay.
The torch relay is like credited as being what turned public opinion to the Olympics because they went fucking everywhere and they went past the Great Barrier Reef and they had a little thing that meant it burned. Like there was a little flame underwater.
I am under the water.
They had a little like canister thing or whatever.
That makes
And they
fake
scuba
sense.
dive past it.
I do remember the shape of the Olympic torch,
Yeah.
like the kind of like Sydney Opera House inspired
Yeah,
like
yeah.
swoops and stuff.
No, they didn't really like it.
It looked good.
It's an easy thing to sell because like, so they went everywhere.
I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man.
So
Across the deserts,
it starts in like Athens. It goes to a bunch of Greek islands. Then they fly it to Guam. And they went to most of the Pacific. They couldn't go to Fiji because there was a presidential coup going on.
Oh, oops.
When a disgruntled nobody strode through the doors of Parliament to kill Fiji.
And then they flew into Uluru, and it worked its way to the eastern coast and kind of went around the country clockwise, anti-clockwise rather. So working its way to the eastern coast and going up. It takes the Indian Pacific train line across like the country, and it takes the Spirit of Tasmania up and down to go to Tasmania.
Damn.
Crisscrosses around Victoria, New South Wales. It stopped in Canberra briefly, and then Kathy Freeman set fire to the entire Olympic Stadium. Or
Yes,
just the
queen.
flame. I think it's probably worth that I show you actually. It's not super detailed because you have to go into
wow.
each city to see it because they like go to like all these small towns. Like a lot of people got to see this. Like
Yeah, damn, it went to Mount Isa.
yeah, it went everywhere.
Broome, Albany.
And like
Damn.
yeah, enough Australians, enough Sydney-siders fell into line that the Olympics went amazing. And then 9/11 happened the next year, so you can't get rid of that surveillance and the intrusive laws, and we're all up in Iraq, and Al-Qaeda could be on the next plane over, and Afghanistan's so close, they're coming in on boats, so we need to make sure we have our... So the changes never got undone, and Sydney's worse to live in, and Brisbane's looking at doing the same thing in a few years.
Yay. Well, I mean, they've already started constructing, like, stuff here. Like, I mean, already, like, nearby to us, they're constructing, like...
The cycling.
Yeah, Olympic style, like, hey, yeah, well, this is going to be used in the Olympics.
Yeah, and, like, if
It's
you're...
like, fuck, all right, I guess.
If you're an Olympic cyclist, fuck you. Anyway, let's quickly talk about the upcoming Brisbane Olympics.
Fuck you in particular.
Yeah, like, no, I just don't give a fuck about Olympic cycling. Just ride your bike to go somewhere.
Just have fun.
Yeah, just
Why
have
aren't you
fun.
having fun?
Just have fun. Fuck the velodrome. There was this article about this kid, and her parents are like, they can't take the velodrome away. It's the only velodrome in the country, or whatever, that she can go to, and she loves indoor cycling. It's like, why'd you let your kid get into indoor cycling?
That's a bizarre hobby.
There's only one velodrome in the country because no one gives a shit about indoor cycling.
Hey, you guys can't get rid of the firebombing ring. My daughter loves firebombing. She can't go anywhere else for this.
You need to, like, wax and shit. Like, it's not the kid's fault, but...
No, the parents
What?
have encouraged a weird activity.
Yeah, shut the fuck up about the velodrome.
Put her on the road or something, I don't know.
I hope they've demolished
Build one
it.
at home.
Yeah. So, no Olympics 2032. Let's talk about how no one wants to host the Olympics anymore. The tourism bump has been well and truly debunked. Enough regular tourists stay away during the Olympics that plus the amount of money spent on security and infrastructure means that you lose tourism money overall.
Which is insane. That's the entire point of people, like, wanting the Olympics in the first place is like, oh, a tourism boost.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is going to be so good for the economy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the only reason
Holy
we're
shit.
experiencing a little bit more rain, a little bit of a gust as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only reason, like, I would go to the Brisbane Olympics is because we're here. If we're not in Brisbane, I'm not coming up for it.
Well, a lot of people leave during the Olympics as well.
Yeah.
So, like, and you don't get domestic tourism as much.
Yeah, because everyone's just kind of like, well...
So the IOC has kind of started awarding the Olympics really early and bypassing bids they don't seem to take seriously. So Brisbane won the rights to host 2032, 72-5.
The River City will become the Olympic City.
It looks like we are behind.
Wow.
Yeah, no one gave the time of day to like India, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Qatar, and Brisbane thus has more time to prepare than any previous Olympics. Like, shit's just being waved through.
God, that's not gonna help at all.
Yeah, and
this place is run by idiots.
Well, so initially the public was told that there were going to be no new stadiums built for the Olympics. Then There were plans to demolish and rebuild the Gabba,
which is just insane.
One of Australia's most iconic sporting venues, and really big. Significant pushback, especially the $2.7 billion cost and the displacement of a whole school, meant that the plan was scrapped in favour of one at Victoria Park, for which there is still significant pushback. And then the Labor government lost the election, and an independent review was meant to tell the new Premier, David Crisafulli, what the plan was. And that review was meant to produce its findings yesterday.
Oh, no.
And we're hunkering for this cyclone, so that might be delayed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
So the Olympic Village is being built in North Hamilton. Some of the work has already begun, being fast-tracked under the claim that it would become social housing before the Games.
Why the fuck you lying?
So that isn't happening. Some of it will become...
Of course it's not.
Yeah, some of it's going to become social housing after, but most of it is just built to rent or private or whatever.
Yeah, fucking course it is.
Yeah.
Why do something for the benefit of people when you can make money on nonsense? And also, why do charitable things when you can simply be like a cartoon villain about it?
Like, because they're still building the places. They're just going to be empty until the Olympics, and then they'll be sold off privately.
Well, that's the
They were
thing.
like, make them social housing before the
The
Olympics.
ruling class of this country loves empty houses.
They love empty houses. Oh my god. The Greens are calling for it to be turned into completely social and public housing. And I hope you get them to do it, guys.
Come on, Max.
Come on, Max.
Max, come on, man.
Come on, Max.
Do have to say big shout out to like all the Greens volunteers at the sandbagging places
absolutely.
across Brisbane.
This is
I saw maybe like a couple of Labor people. I don't know if I saw any Liberal Party members, but I saw a shitload of Greens. Like everybody, Greens gave me water. They gave me sunscreen.
Yeah.
They helped me drag my bags like the fucking 200 meters to the spot where I had to park because it was so fucking busy.
No, this is a broadly speaking pro-Greens podcast, I'd say.
Yeah, and I saw Max Chandler Mather come out at one point helping people with sandbags, in the location I was at, and I was like, damn, Max is here?
He shows up to shit.
Max be here.
Yeah.
He brought ice water. That was really nice.
He has his free barbecues. Like, we're not, aligned with the Greens necessarily.
No, I would not say I'm not like a Greens member, but out of the people available to vote for, they are the ones that I choose.
Above and beyond the only serious political party in this country. Like, no, that's not true. The only serious political party with actual seats. Anyway, if you're the kind of ghoul that likes to profit from others' desire for shelter, the Australian Financial Review has a guide on how to profit from the Brisbane Olympic property boom.
Great.
The author of that article has a podcast, and my new goal is to have more listens than he does. The global No Olympics movement, who are so cool, are obviously focusing on the 2028 LA Olympics. If you're in Olympics and you're a sports fan, like, I'm sorry, but you were brainwashed by your parents and your government. The Olympics are not something you should want, and our clamoring to host them is reflective of an insecurity and an inconsiderateness for our fellow citizens. So I'd like to formally announce that if somebody else wants to start an Olympics Brisbane, I will definitely come to at least one meeting, and I will be very supportive when I text you about how well you're doing, but I'm just so busy.
Oh, so relatable.
Look up No Olympics, they do amazing work.
All right, hell yeah.
But Brisbane's going to burn itself out either way, because that is the ultimate march of a global city. Thoughts, Karen?
Really, really excited for the Brisbane Olympics. Yay.
Like I said, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think it will happen, but something's going to go terribly fucking wrong because I don't trust anybody here to make good decisions.
No.
Nor do I trust them to be able to run an effective event. I think given how successful Sydney was, Brisbane is never going to be able to measure up. In fact, I think probably they're going to try and coast by on a lot of goodwill. And it's just not going to work because Australian politicians and, people in positions of power seem to have this inflated view of how other people think of us.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, well, we're Australia. And it's like, who gives a fuck?
The average Australian is so shocked to hear that Australians are regarded as annoying tourists.
It's like, what do you mean? And it's like, because...
What?
We're absolute dog cunts when we go overseas.
Absolute dog cunts at home.
Absolute dog cunts at home.
Yeah, no,
it baffles the mind.
The Sydney Olympics also, I guess it's important to note, that's pre-9/11.
Yeah.
That's 2000. The zeitgeist.
When the world wasn't as, I suppose, it was racist in a different way.
People were thinking differently about possibilities for the future. The things that people hoped would happen largely didn't occur. However, we do have the technological revolution to thank for The iPhone.
Yay.
3D printers.
I do like 3D printers. I don't have a use for one, but I'd love to have one just to make little things.
I saw they were 3D printing a house.
What?
Yeah, they're 3D printing a house.
Just snap that bitch together or whatever?
Yeah.
How much does it cost out of no personal interest?
I don't know how much a 3D printed house costs. To find out, we're going to do an investigation next week into 3D printed houses and their viability in the Australian summer. For the time being, Kieran, where can the audience find you?
You can find me at home hanging out.
Yeah, me too. We'll go hang out now.
All right.
Bye. Everyone.